special broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. This is our 75th year of independence. We are looking at an Azadi Ka Amrit Kal. The next 25 years should be India's story, where India will become or work towards becoming the Sone Ki Chidiya, where everybody was happy, everybody was prosperous, and everybody had something that is life. In this, the next 25 years, hum aur aap rahe na rahe, the next generation is going to be there. And in that generation, there is a huge number who are forced to work, who do not know what the future holds for them. We're going to get into conversation with somebody who spent his entire lifetime for getting justice for every child. Nobel Laureate and child rights activist Kailash Satyarthi ji. Namaste. Aabhar कि आपने थोड़ा समय निकाला आपका, because you're going to be part of something very historic. So let's start from that. It's the 5th Global Conference on Child Labour. And it's happening in Durban. That means it's happening in the African continent. Is that also a first? And we are talking in a post-COVID era. Let's say it's post, कि हमारे पीछे रह गया. And when the numbers are very scary, 160 million children worldwide subject to child labour. This is a year of voice against child labour. So काफी कुछ historic hai.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about it and what is your role going to be there?
Well, this international conference is going to happen in a very critical juncture. People like me have been raising this voice and saying that pandemic is not simply health crisis for adult people or children. This is the crisis for the entire civilization, entire generation of children. If we are not going to attend it now, this generation of children, then we are going to lose the entire generation and the generations to come. Unfortunately, additional 46 million children are going to join the workforce towards the end of this year due to pandemic if we are not going to act now, are going to become child labor. Now we have 160 million children working in full-time jobs. So it would become more than 200 million. 20 crore se zyada ho jayenge. So this is a very critical juncture, as I said. So it is not something to celebrate and be happy about it and pat each other's back. This is a crisis conference, I call it. Of course, the governments will come and say their success stories. But what is the success? Before pandemic, the number of children grew, and that is very challenging.
True, but if this number has grown, and I'm just going to ask you to elaborate, when you say children who will now, say 46 million children, you said, by the end of the year, if we don't act now, will again join the workforce as child labor. So who are you defining as children, and what are the circumstances that we're talking about?
So in most countries and globally, there are a lot of set norms. 18 years of age is considered the age of childhood, age of children. But when it comes to child labor workforce, in many countries, 14 years is the age where the children are prohibited to be employed into any form of child labor. And in most countries, including in India, children could not be employed in hazardous occupations, any kind of hazardous occupations up to the age of 18. So that matches with the global criteria.
True. So when you say this is a crisis conference, what is it that you are expecting to derive out of this conference? Because it's historic. It's happening in Africa, in the continent of Africa for the first time. It's happening after a gap, bit of a gap, because COVID delayed matters. Usually 4 साल में एक बार होता है.
4 साल में होता है, ये 6 साल में हो रहा है.
6 साल में हो रहा है. तो आपको क्या लगता है कि नेट डिराइवेटिव या फोकस आप क्या चाहेंगे होना चाहिए?
I think there is a serious need of sense of urgency, as well as a sense of collective responsibility towards our children, and that should be reflected in budgetary allocations, as well as the international development assistance. ODA में भी पैसा बढ़ना चाहिए. हैरानी की और दुख की बात यह है कि in 2015, Sustainable Development Goals were adopted unanimously by all of us. And then we have made a commitment to eradicate all forms of child labor by 2025.
Yeah.
But in the 4 years, initial 4 years of this SDG announcement, the number of child laborers has increased for the first time in last 2 decades from 152 million to 160 million. So I would say I am very concerned, rather I am angry, because no country can hide behind any excuse of pandemic, because this number has grown before pandemic.
Yeah.
And now the estimates show that this is going to add, as I said,
Yeah.
46 million additional children.
this is
4.5 करोड़
worldwide.
से ज़्यादा और दुनिया भर में, मैं दुनिया भर की
जी,
बात कर रहा
जी.
हूँ. So it's very serious. There is no excuse for it. There is no justification for it. That why the world has growing in many fields.
Yeah.
चाहे वो इकोनॉमी हो, चाहे वो इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी हो, एवरीथिंग. But the children are suffering. So that is something which cannot be tolerated and must not be tolerated.
But isn't it ironical that this entire SDG climate convention is all to ensure that there is a future and that there is a planet for the forthcoming generations, and you're saying that the contrast to that is कि जो forthcoming generation है उसी को हम child labor में झोंक रहे हैं.
हाँ, तो हमारे लिए शायद एक राजनीतिक प्राथमिकता नहीं है, ये पॉलिटिकल प्रायोरिटी नहीं है दुनिया में. और we don't have adequate amount of political will, and that is reflected in many ways, including when you look at the budgetary allocations for protection of children, when you look at the education and health for children, तो कहीं ना कहीं नज़र आता है कि ऐसे ही बिजनेस एज यूजुअल चल रहा है. लेकिन यू कैन नॉट रन दिस एज बिजनेस एज यूजुअल शो. देयर इज अ सेंस ऑफ अर्जेंसी.
You have a program which is called Leaders and Laureates for Children, if I remember correctly.
हाँ जी.
And इस ILO session में भी you have a particular panel discussion which is going to happen. So tell us about this program and what are you aiming to achieve?
So what many of us realize that there is a serious moral deficit in all spheres of life, may it be polity, may it be society, may it be cultures and religions and so on. हर जगह पर NGO हों, कुछ हों, सब बिजनेस में ऐसी तरह. So I have a strong belief that there are millions of reasons to divide humanity.
Correct.
But there is one single reason
To unite us.
and that is children. That is the cause of children. If we try to focus on it, then we are going to unite the whole world. So in these situations, we initiated this Laureates and Leaders for Children. So that was launched in India, in राष्ट्रपति भवन.
Wow.
राष्ट्रपति जी ने उस समय जो थे उन्होंने बहुत उत्साह दिखाया और वो इसमें शामिल हुए. लेकिन 24 Nobel laureates and world leaders, including some of the kings, queens, princes, etc., joined hands together for this cause, what we call the globalization of compassion for children.
Wow.
So वो हमारे उस स्लोगन के साथ इकट्ठे हुए राष्ट्रपति भवन में. And the second summit was held in Jordan, because Jordan's prince is the part of this laureates and leaders.
Wow.
तो मुझे खुशी है कि इस समय जब हम इन मुद्दों को उठाते हैं, जैसे अभी भी हम लोग कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि बच्चों को प्रायोरिटी दी जाए पोस्ट पैंडेमिक रिहेबिलिटेशन में या और चीज़ों में, तो more than 90 Nobel laureates and world leaders join hands under this umbrella of Laureates and Leaders for Children. So this is a very, very strong, I would say, the platform, moral platform to speak on behalf of those children who are most marginalized in the world.
True, and if you have top leaders and of course laureates who are coming together and saying, no, this is something we need to turn the spotlight on, and I'm sure everybody would take notice. I just realized that आपने राष्ट्रपति जी की बात की, तो आप राष्ट्रपति रामनाथ कोविंद जी से भी मिले हैं.
जी,
तो थोड़ा बताएंगे कि किस विषय में बात हुई और क्या इस पर भी आपने उनसे चर्चा की?
जी जी, मैं उनसे मिलता रहता हूँ और मैं उनका बहुत सम्मान करता हूँ. He is full of concern for the most vulnerable sections of society and particularly for children. So we share some of the thoughts and ideas. So हमने इस पर बात की उनके साथ अभी. और अगर वो कंटिन्यू करते हैं तो बहुत अच्छी बात है, लेकिन नहीं भी करेंगे तो हम लोग मिलके ज़रूर बच्चों के लिए कुछ ना कुछ करेंगे. लेकिन it was very generic talk.
It was just a
Nothing,
courtesy
yeah,
call
so,
that you.
yeah, courtesy call कि अब
हाँ.
हैं वो यहाँ तो इससे पहले भी we organized many activities together, and one of the most significant was that President Kovind ji has hosted the culmination of our long march, which was demanding for new laws or change of laws on trafficking and child sexual abuse. So हमने कन्याकुमारी से कश्मीर से दिल्ली तक का जो मार्च 2017 में निकाला,
जी.
so that was culminated in Rashtrapati Bhavan, and that is for the first time in this way that such marches were culminating in Rashtrapati Bhavan.
Rashtrapati Bhavan. So he's very quiet about all of this, but he supports it quite actively.
Of course, he is very big supporter of such issues.
तो भारत के राष्ट्रपति की तो हमने बात की, अब आप एक और राष्ट्रपति जी से अभी हाल में मिले हैं अप्रैल में, जो बाइडेन से मिले, उनकी टीम से मिले, आपका यूएस का दौरा था. So tell us a little bit about what your US trip entailed. And what were you able to discuss there? I think you met USAID members also there.
Yeah, I met almost all top advisors and the leaders who matter, not only in their country but globally. तो प्रेसिडेंट बाइडेन से नहीं मिला मैं, लेकिन बाकी उनके सलाहकारों
उनकी टीम से मिले,
उनकी टीम से अलग-अलग टीमों से मिले. So I had two clear agendas about it, and that I'm going to speak and emphasize during the upcoming Durban conference. We strongly feel that there is a need of creation of a global social protection mechanism. We can learn some lesson from India. For example, Manrega scheme. For example, midday meal schemes and stipend for poor children, and this SC/ST programs and so on. So social protection programs have been very helpful in addressing such difficult situations of children, abuse and exploitation, and it has uplifted poor people from poverty. We have seen example in Brazil. One of the most successful examples of social protection is Bolsa Familia, which was initiated by President Lula, and I work very closely with them because we work in Brazil also. So I enjoy a good relationship with President Lula. Former president, but I'm sure he's going to be the future president. So when you're talking about president. So anyway, such programs have been very successful and proven that we have to create a global social protection mechanism. And that idea was very much welcomed by lawmakers, advisors of President Biden, and a number of other European countries, because I have been in contact with several presidencies and the European Union. And I am getting a lot of good response about it, that there is a need of a global universal social protection program where all marginalized children in the world could be benefited. Now after pandemic, as we said that 200 million additional total child laborers would be there across the world by the end of this year, though 20 crore se zyada. But in addition to it, 200 million adult people are being pushed into chronic poverty due to pandemic. That is the UN estimations. And 60 million people, additional people, would be pushed into chronic poverty due to this Ukraine crisis, Russia-Ukraine war. Wow. So, बढ़ता जाएगा ये लगातार. So that's why we have been calling that we have to have this social protection program. I tell you, $53 billion additional money globally can ensure education, healthcare, and protection of all children in every marginalized family and all low-income countries. As well as this will also help all pregnant women in the world, particularly in the low-income countries. So $53 billion is not a big deal. It is less than 10 days of global military expenditure.
Correct.
So what is our priority? Do we want to protect our children and the generations, or we are preparing ourselves to fight and destroy?
Correct. But there is one aspect before I come to closer and we'll talk, let's bring in the SDG ambit. Do you think 2025 is going to be possible is a question. The other aspect is when you talk about 53 billion, actually we raise the money. It's the delivery. it's reaching to the children, ensuring that it goes to the right person, and this is a global delivery system mechanism which will have to come in place, and then of course monitoring, and this 53 billion will last only for a certain period. Then how many will be brought out? So all of that is also our nations willing to look at that prospect?
Yes, of course. When we talk of mechanism, then there are at least two more parallels. One is on education and one is on health. They are already there. So health is even a bigger program. It's a fund. But in education, this global partnership for education is a similar partnership program. Which ensures education for the poor children everywhere in the world. So I was also among the founders of that, with some of the head of the states and so on, and head of the UN agencies as a civil society representative. Now I am not in the board, but I was there in the primary years. So वो एक चीज़ है already. So when we talk of this social protection, we talk of direct and swift delivery, direct delivery to the children. It is not that it will go through typical bureaucratic channels and ये इधर पैसे खा जाएंगे,
फिल्टर में ही वो गायब हो
फिल्टर में गायब हो जाता है, टाइम भी लगता है उससे. तो जैसे अभी भी बहुत सारे प्रोग्राम हमारे देश में ही चल रहे हैं जो पेंडेमिक की वजह से हुए, खाना पहुंचाने का, इस तरह का
direct benefit transfers and also all food distribution systems. PDS was direct.
They are already there in most countries. They are there.
Correct.
And they have been evolved due to pandemic also, because these countries needed swift response in their own domestic area, and that has been possible to do. So why can't we do this?
No, we can. Obviously we can. But then you think SDG 2025 is possible, is realistic, or it will take some more time?
Well, I would say ashamed to say, but I can confess, also being the UN Secretary General's advocate on Sustainable Development Goals, who he has appointed me, and I told him and the whole group, this is a small group, intimate group which advises on these issues and advocates for it, and we said that if we don't take innovative, bold, immediate, not even urgent, immediate steps, we fail our children. And if we fail the child-related goals, then we are going to fail all goals.
All goals, correct.
It is not just the child labor issue.
I agree.
Because if so many children are trapped into child labor, slavery, trafficking in mines and factories, how come they are going to go to school? Means we fail
on the education.
On the education front. If 160 million children are working today, it means 160 million empty classrooms and 160 million job prospects taken over by children or imposed on children, because children are the cheapest source of labor, and their parents and other adult people remain jobless. So that makes a vicious circle of poverty and child labor.
Correct.
So unfortunately, I would agree that we are not going to accomplish this goal by 2025 until unless something very bold happens.
Very bold.
And this is the reason I am going to go to Durban.
No, absolutely, and it has to be done on a war footing. It's like you have to treat it as an emergency, and you'll have to treat it like इसको अभी नहीं किया तो फिर कभी नहीं होगा. So it will have to be treated like that. Let's come closer to India. भारत की बात करते हैं. भारत में भी अब कोविड की वजह से झटका तो लगा है, and there have been a lot of people who've been, like you said, pushed into poverty or forced into child labor, forced into ensuring that every hand which is there in the house is getting to work. And this number estimates peg it between 10 to 13 million children. तो 1 से 1,30,25 तक आप इसको देख सकते हैं. How do you see India dealing with something like this?
देखिए, इंडिया में हम लोग बहुत अच्छे कानून बना पाए हैं. हमारी सरकार, हमारा समाज सब मिल के. कानूनों के इम्प्लीमेंटेशन की बात अभी एक बड़ा चैलेंज है. वी हैव वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग लॉ ऑन चाइल्ड लेबर, वी हैव वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग लॉ ऑन चाइल्ड सेक्सुअल अब्यूज, वी हैव लॉज अगेंस्ट रेप, वेरी स्ट्रिंजेंट लॉज. The only challenge is how we are going to enforce them, implement them. But I see a lot of concern and interest across the border, across the board. So that is very important. I have been in contact with the relevant ministers and also with civil society organizations, and we are pushing hard. Of course, first of all, we have to cope up with this trauma, I would say, which is still there. I mean, pandemic is not completely gone.
It's not gone.
So nobody knows. The uncertainty is still looming on our heads.
True.
अच्छी बात ये हुई है कि वैक्सीनेशंस काफ़ी हो गया है और चीज़ें हो गई हैं, लेकिन अभी भी बहुत काम करने की ज़रूरत है. एंड आई होप दैट आवर गवर्नमेंट एंड द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स would prioritize the issues of most vulnerable, most marginalized children, left out children, and those who are further victimized due to pandemic.
Yeah.
They should be taken into account. They should be prioritized, and that requires not only strong compassion, concern, and concerted action, but that also requires adequate budgetary allocations for them. And for the enforcement of laws.
True, I agree. Last two questions, Kailashi. One of them is not about child labor per se, but it's about the mental health of children. That's also another aspect that you've spoken about. Do you also believe that we need to become a little more conscious about this aspect which largely छुपा दिया जाता है? Because adults तो ठीक हैं, but बच्चों पर जो असर हुआ है of this pandemic and of course the mental impact of it.
Yeah. एक तो ये पेंडेमिक की वजह से if so many children could not attend the school for years, I mean, more than 1 year or 1.5 years, बहुत सारे anxieties, depressions and other kind of mental elements came. So they have to be addressed again, and that requires a lot of efforts. Unfortunately, neither the society is prepared nor the governments are prepared. We don't have adequate number of mental health workers, for example, or doctors dealing with the child mental health or mental, psychological care and psychiatric care. That is the big problem. Another aspect which I have been raising is that 8 children go missing every hour in India, according to government statistics, and many of them or most of them are sold or bought like animals and sometimes in lesser price than the cattle. 5 children are sexually abused every hour, and 3 children are raped. Young children are raped. And in every single case, there is a serious mental trauma and agony is attached to it. It is not just the crime, but that is something which is so serious. Not only in case of these children, but their parents, their relatives, उनके दादा दादी फूफा पापी मामा सब लोग परेशान हो जाते हैं, क्योंकि इट्स ए सोशल स्टिग्मा. अनफॉर्चुनेटली जिन बेटियों के साथ बलात्कार होते हैं उनको ही लोग दोषी ठहराते हैं, हकारत की नज़र से देखते हैं, शादियां उनकी नहीं होती, इतना बुरा हाल है. सो पूरी फैमिली पर उसका इम्पैक्ट पड़ता है, एंड दैट रिक्वायर्स इमीडिएट मेंटल हेल्थ सपोर्ट फॉर चिल्ड्रन एंड फैमिलीज. in addition to what you said about the children who could not go to school. So हम बहुत चिंतित हैं इस बात को लेकर कि अगर हमारा समाज इसको एक्नॉलेज नहीं करता और एक टैबो से ऊपर नहीं उठता, सोशल टैबो से, कि हम मानसिक रूप से भी बीमार हो सकते हैं. अगर हमारा हाथ पाँव दिल दिमाग बीमार हो सकता है तो दिमाग में भी कुछ बीमारी, मानसिक बीमारी भी हो सकती है. ये अगर हम स्वीकार करेंगे, दैट एक्सेप्टेंस इज नीडेड ग्लोबली दैट देयर इज ए सीरियस प्रॉब्लम एंड वी हैव टू एड्रेस इट नाउ. अगर हम उसको आइडेंटिफाई नहीं करेंगे तो एड्रेस भी नहीं कर सकते. तो इसके लिए मुझे डर लग रहा है कि कहीं भारत इसका एपिसेंटर ना बन जाए भविष्य में, क्योंकि बहुत सारे कॉम्बिनेशंस हैं यहाँ पर, बहुत सारे फैक्टर्स हैं जो शायद बहुत कंट्रीज़ में नहीं हैं, गरीबी के बावजूद भी.
हाँ, कई एक्सपर्ट्स मानते हैं कि भारत उस टिपिंग पॉइंट तक पहुँच रहा है जहाँ से अगर वो हट नहीं पाया तो वी विल गेट इनटू अ प्लेस वेयर वी विल हैव अ लॉट ऑफ क्रेजीज अमंगस्ट अस एंड वी विल बिकम क्वाइट लिटरली अ क्रेजी नेशन. So we don't know how to deal with it. My final question, and let's end the note a little positively, that this is for you personally, as a Bharatiya in this 75th year, as somebody who's going to represent Bharat and of course the ideals tomorrow at this event, what is there in your heart, or what are you envisioning?
देखिए आनंद जी, I have been saying it and I will repeat it again.
जी.
That India may be a land of hundreds of problems, thousands of problems, but India is the mother of a billion solution.
Yeah.
We are solution-oriented society. That is in our DNA. आप गरीब से गरीब साधारण आदमी के पास पहुंच जाइए तो वो किसी बीमारी का इलाज आपको बता देगा, किसी और चीज़ का इलाज बता देगा, ये पत्ते खा लीजिए, नीम खा लीजिए. And That is the mindset of an average Indian. So we are solution-oriented society. And not only that, we have courage, we have conviction, we have those guts to show the path to the rest of the world. So ये आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव पर मेरा मानना है कि हम लोग एक बिग लीप लेंगे and very soon we will see that every child, not only in India, but in India's leadership, would be free, safe and educated, healthy child everywhere in the world.
Absolutely, and let's be the first nation to achieve zero child labor. Let's work towards that consciously as Bharatiya. This much तो we can do for our country. इतना तो हम कर ही सकते हैं और consciously कर सकते हैं. कैलाश सत्यार्थी जी, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very very much. All the very very best.
मैं कई बार एक शेर कहता हूँ, एक वो किसी का शायर बशीर बद्री जी का है.
हाँ.
वतन की रेत मुझे एड़ियाँ रगड़ने दे, वतन की रेत मुझे एड़ियाँ रगड़ने दे, मुझे यकीन है कि पानी यहीं से निकलेगा.
पानी यहीं से निकलेगा. क्या बात है, वाह वाह, बहुत अच्छे. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.